Welcome back to the Aromatic Mystery School. I'm Elizabeth Ashley, the Secret Healer. This is an Aromathology lecture about Demeter, and this is lesson 2, and we're going to talk about the archetype of Demeter. So, Demeter is defined as what's known as a vulnerable goddess. That means that her archetype is defined by her relationships. Like Hera's are. So Hera's sort of technologies in her archetype are bound up by her relationship to her husband. Demeter's are bound up in her relationship to her children. Persephone too has this binding, and that's because everything about Persephone's story is bound to her relationship with her mother. So these are interesting aspects to look at really first before we look at the more the ones that stand alone, because these all look at a woman's needs to be affiliated with other people and how they bond with other people. And these are fantastically interesting people to observe because they are very well tuned to the needs of other people. And because of that, that's what makes them vulnerable. And more than anybody else, Demeter is tuned into the needs of everything that's going on around her because she has this need to take care of everyone, and it's pathological. She can't do anything about it, and so often this will get in the way of anything that would be better for her relationships. What's interesting is that these vulnerable goddesses all have terrible pasts with men. They were humiliated, they have been dominated, they have been abducted or raped by male deities. So abduction's obvious in the case of Persephone, if you know the story. Depending on which depiction of the story of Demeter and Persephone, there are some tellings of the story that when Persephone had gone missing and that Demeter sat by the well weeping for her in her sorrow, Poseidon came and turned himself into a horse. She turned herself, oh no, other way. He came, he tried it on with her. She turned herself into a mare. He turned himself into a stallion and raped her as a horse. So they have these situations where they are entirely hemmed in by men, and this makes them vulnerable. And what happens, as happens with all of us, is they develop characteristic ways of reacting to the betrayals and the dishonours. And what's really interesting about this work is you'll start to see that once you see the triggers, the way that you respond to these betrayals and dishonours quite often is the same as the goddess, and so you create a predictable pattern. But what's interesting is they have also found ways to evolve through these tasks, and so these can also give us insights into how we can evolve through these too. So every archetype has like a theme going through it, and quite often with the goddesses they're similar, but particularly with Demeter, the themes are power and control. That she will see herself as a victim and she will express her anger by volatile outbursts, but also by going into depression. So we've talked about the rites at Eleusis. If you've read any of my books, I write about it quite extensively in the Meeting the Melissae. But Demeter also had other rites at other places. In actual fact, she had 7 main rites. The Eleusinian Mysteries is just one. But at Samothrace, she has completely different myths, and these are quite interesting to see because these also play out in the Demeter archetype. So the story is that Demeter lures Iasion away when they're at a marriage. They're at a wedding of Cadmus and Harmonia. And she lures him away, she seduces him, and she has intercourse. Um, and Demeter lies on her back in a freshly ploughed furrow. And we're supposed to believe that they didn't know about reproduction or plant fertilization. Literally, the goddess of abundance is having sex in a ploughed furrow. I mean, come on. Um, and then when they rejoined the celebration, Zeus guessed what had happened because Demeter had got mud on her bum. And then he jealously kills Iasion with a thunderbolt. Now, I can't quite remember where it is in the timeline because Demeter was Zeus's lover before Hera, as well as being his sister. And I'm pretty sure that Zeus is by this time married to Hera as well. There are some disagreements. So Servius, in his commentary, says that no, it wasn't Zeus that killed Iasion, it was his brother. And Hyginus says, no, it wasn't that, he was killed by his horses. And Ovid says, no, they got married. They lived to a ripe old age together. And then some versions of the myth conclude with Iasion and Triptolemus working together to spread the story, the secrets of agriculture. But that's kind of a backstory. What we're interested in here is she can't even have a lover because Zeus has so much control over her. She is the personification of the maternal archetype. She represents maternal instinct, which may be fulfilled through pregnancy or through providing physical or psychological or spiritual nourishment to others. So it can be a mother, but it could equally be a nun, that they have this spiritual nurturing for other people. And likewise, sometimes the nurturing can come through a job. They're often like quite powerful businesswomen and they nurture their job. Or you'll often find people with Demeter archetypes might not be that ambitious because they're carrying out their Demeter archetype at home and flourishing surrounded by chickens and wearing aprons and stuff, might have a part-time job. And then those people tend to be fetching and carrying for everybody else, doing a bit of making the tea, taking cakes in for everybody, and being a little bit exploited. And you'll see how that plays out as we go. So on the emotional level, the Demeter archetype will be this desire to nurture, to become a mother. But on the physical level, there's actually missed some out here, so let's talk about that. So first of all, on the physical level, there is the actual ticking of the biological clock, that yearning to procreate. And actually, put it so, meter means mother, but it also has the sensation of a clock. However, the Demeter archetype is also about being overly nourished, a little bit greedy. Persephone tends to be undernourished and perhaps anorexic and have quite a lot of sort of emotional turmoil, whereas Demeter is greedy. She eats, she feeds too much, she's just all about abundance all of the time. So you can see how that would play out in the physical body. So we talked about how you've got this emotional desire to become a mother, that there's the actual ticking of the clock that happens in the body. But that can also mean that the goddess acts in subterfuge. And so what I mean by that is you might often have a young girl who's really not interested in school. She's only interested in becoming a mom. She probably plays with toy dolls all the time, dresses them all up, and she may be taking her pill, but she may forget to take it accidentally, not on purpose, accidentally, or she may have sex when she's had diarrhea and somehow the goddess manages to get her pregnant. And you've got this strange situation where everybody around was like, "Oh, I'm sure she probably did it on purpose. That was always going to happen. That's what she always wanted." But in truth, she hasn't. It's like there's like fate took a hand. The goddess takes control. And what's really sad about this is this hand that fate deals will affect the rest of her life. And so quite often she'll have repeated pain. So it might be that she catches us being pregnant and mum and dad persuade her this isn't a good plan, and she either miscarriages or she has an abortion or even gives the child up for adoption. All of those are like a massive psychological trauma to her because her body and her mind and everything about her want to be pregnant. Like I say, she has an interesting relationship with food. Um, as I mentioned, she'll be the one that is serving coffee in the office. She'll be moving to the country to grow lettuces, probably. She will be surrounded by her hens. She'll definitely make lots and lots of cakes. But her daughter, no. Her daughter is all about control by not allowing her to give them to her. And so, quite often, you'll find this strange relationship where the Persephone archetype comes around with control around food. Mum is all about the food, and it's so cruel, right? It's really cruel if you think about it, but it's accidental. It is accidental. So I quite like this. I don't know if this came out of the book written by Jean Shinoda Bolen or if it's my work that I came up with the phrase psychiatric strength. It seems like an oxymoron, but I like it. It feels good. The good things that are in her personality is is the Demeter archetype is very, very stubborn. She has endless patience and she really, really perseveres. And so you might think back to the myth about how she searches and searches and searches to find her child. And she sits for days um, by the well, and then she's taken in and she becomes the nanny to Matinera's child, and everything seems to be sorted after the strange explosion of finding out that why did you put my child in the fire? And oh, she's a goddess, everything's okay then, but it's not okay. And she withdraws her power from the earth and she's like, I uh, we shall not be moved, like a Greenham Common kind of thing. Nope, not until you listen to me. So that is a strength. Um, and she is a generous goddess. The whole point of the Mysteries of Eleusis is that once her way to thank the people of Eleusis is to show them the secrets of agriculture. She doesn't keep those hidden, and it's all about making sure that everybody involved with her has this enormous abundance, this huge amount of bounty, and this reassurance that it will always return. And so this generous goddess on 3 levels mimics the role of the mother. So from the physical need, she's feeding, right? But also she can feel this biological maternal bond to her child. She offers emotional support and understanding to everybody around her, not just to her children, to everybody. And the physical needs, she's the one that's gonna, oh look, let me clean your knee up after you've fallen over. She's the one that really tends the child. And spiritual wisdom, When things go wrong, she's wise. Of course, she's wise. She's an age old goddess from the beginning of time. And women with this Demeter archetype have old heads on their soldiers and soldiers shoulders, and they are this like personification of Mother Earth, salt of the earth. But the downside is she is only happy when she can be expressing that. So she will pick up all sorts of waifs and strays to try and fulfill that. But sooner or later, chances are, for example, the waifs and strays tend to be addicts. That goes wrong. Children go off to university. Mm, Children die. I mean, that's a terrible one. But sooner or later, she can't go all the way through her life just being this outpouring of nourishment. And when time or occasion takes that away, shuts the top off, then she's like, but I don't know who I am. And she goes deep, deep, deep into depression. Think about how Demeter sits in her temple and just, she's given the secrets of agriculture to everybody. They've set her up in the temple. They're worshipping her, but no, she needs her daughter. And so this depression is all consuming to some women. And I will reiterate that everybody has these archetypes in their psyche. Some are stronger than others, and it is possible to kind of rein some in and allow other ones to come through. That's what we're going to be aiming towards, because at the moment, for many people, Demeter is so full on. And that is almost societal conditioning, right? That we are expected to stay at home, or, well, no, not so much we don't stay at home, but we still tend the home, even though a lot of us have got jobs. How many unpaid hours of childcare, how many unpaid hours of housekeeping, all of those things that we do push the strength of this archetype up. So it's at the forefront for many of us. But when it's gone, when the kids go to university, they get married, empty nest syndrome is really painful. Worse, those poor women who have this strong archetype but can't conceive or have a child dying. I mean, it's awful. But likewise, for those women who have this archetype, perhaps don't have children, and they funnel all of that energy into the business, their job, it comes to an end. And one thing that I see quite a lot at the moment, because there's cuts in government funding, you've got these people who are really caring people who work for example, social workers or youth workers, who really want to care for people, but there's just not the ability to be there. They're losing their jobs because of the government cuts, or there's just not, they feel restricted. They want to be able to do so much more, and the financial restraints are really hard. And again, this will really cause not only depression but also anger. Um, and I will clarify though. I've put here that Hera would lash out, but Demeter goes into a depression. Hera lashes out by being spiteful, jealous, nasty, cursing people. Demeter's volatile rage just goes, I am not going to do it anymore. It's explosive and it's gone, but it's like she set fire to the field, everything's burnt away, and she's just not going to put her energy back into it anymore. So the sort of psychological weapon that Demeter uses is withdrawal. She withdraws her power. So this is really interesting to observe once you start doing this work, is a psychological phrase called Portnoy's mother complaint. And these women, when they're talking about themselves, don't actually talk about themselves. They talk about their children and what their children have achieved. And they don't actually refer to themselves. And they never list any accomplishments that they've done. They Their accomplishments, as far as they're concerned, is their son's grade 7 piano. You know, and actually, I've been there. My accomplishment for a long time was, well, my son went to Oxford. And it was like that. That's what I achieved. I got him there. It took me a long time to kind of center myself and go, but you can do things for yourself. So this idea of living through their children, um, as the children become their identity, is very rife. And the problem with this is when the kids go, yes, you have the empty nest syndrome. Yes, they have to go and find themselves something else to do. How do you go to an interview and not know who you are outside of your children? Because your employer doesn't want to know what your children did. They want to know what you did. And so that's quite difficult to begin with for a Demeter person. And so to be able to actually look at that and go, okay, what else did I do apart from raise those children? What else can I do? And it's a big thing for getting mums back to work, this psychological step of unpicking yourself from your children. Also, weaponized body language. It's a shame I'm not on the screen because I can do these to death. Like I say, this is my home space. Whoops. So weaponized body language. So for example, my favourite one is fine, and the hands go up. Just do what you want. Do what you want. Or oh right, well that's your stance on it. Right? arms arms across yourself. Right, I've just cut you right off. I'm just not interested in talking to you anymore. So you'll find that like people who stand on their hips, you may have seen the Superman like pose. That's more of an Artemis pose. That's open and come on then, bring it on. Demeter goes, no, cutting it off. Arms across herself completely. Or fine, hands up in the air, but actually it's stop. The hands say stop. It's very interesting. So watch how the body language can be weaponized. So withholding power, we kind of talked a little bit about this. How in the story Demeter has been exposed as being a goddess. She is being worshipped, but because she hasn't got her own way, and fair play, not having your child brought back to you, it's not a small thing. But we say she withdrew her power as Thea and withdrew the fertility of the earth. So it's an easy way of saying she stopped earth growing. So she actually did that. And you can often see that she has this way of going, either allow me to have what I want, or I'm just not going to help you anymore. And she cuts off, or she explodes. Now, I think I've mentioned this. Hera would twist, become spiteful, become jealous, plot. Artemis would draw her bow and shoot you. She's going on the attack. But Demeter's like, I'm just not going to get involved in here anymore. So when it comes to her children, if her children aren't doing what they want, she then starts to control by not answering the phone or not helping with homework, or I can't ever imagine that she would stop cooking, but she becomes obstreperous. So it's this idea of not getting her own way goes right across the relationship. She's unable to see it as anything else but a massive betrayal. And when she does that, she cannot thrive. So as she withholds, she tends to comfort eat to be able to bring that sort of control back through another way. But also biologically, you can often see that maybe um, babies can't feed. She can't, I couldn't put that the right way around in my head. She might not make milk anymore when she's breastfeeding. And so if she doesn't bond with the baby, or she feels like the baby doesn't love her, you've got this relationship where she's not making enough food for the baby, and the baby will struggle to thrive, but she will take that completely personally. So the weaponized stuff will be silent treatment or emotionally hostile. She can't just get past a thing, it becomes the whole thing. Um, and the biggest betrayal that somebody can do to a Demeter mother, if she's really is allowing her archetype to consume everything, is to become independent. It's just so rude. Demeter needs the baby to be wholly dependent on her. And so you can imagine how difficult it might be. You can imagine these mums who breastfeed their children till they're like 5. No judgment at all. No judgment at all. But those are, she's not going to let that child, she's going to give her everything that she's got. Fair enough. But that is definitely a Demeter archetype thing. So young Demeter, she's got a pram. She's dressing up all her toys. She's rocking them to sleep. The poor dog gets dressed up all of the time. She may also have a father who's not very paternal, like Zeus, but also he might not be very interested in her, and so it's all her relationship with her mother. Not a very strong male. What's the word I'm trying to say? Influence. Not a very strong male influence. Very sort of almost like brought up in a matriarchal home. And she has this massive desire to become pregnant. It's a huge drive. And this can play out in 2 different types of people. Aphrodite also has it. But Aphrodite's not interested in getting pregnant. She's interested in the sexual experience. Demeter wants that baby. So we have to be really careful when we see sort of teenage archetypes, what's going on here? The Aphrodite one's quite easy to spot. She's promiscuous, and the way she's dressing, she's provocative. Demeter probably behaves herself quite well, and she may actually not deliberately get pregnant, but because she wants the baby, she just wants the house, the home. It can be accidental, but it can derail her. Demeter also has difficult relationships with other women. So if there's another mom, so first of all, the place to find all your Demeter archetypes in one place is the PTA meeting. They're all there. They're all doing everything they possibly can for their kids. They're doing everything they possibly can to give the school the amount of funds to do everything. I have to say, these are the best kind of women, right? They're cooking all the cakes. They're making all the costumes. They're doing all the stuff. But they have to be the best at it. And if there's somebody who makes them feel like they're not the best at it, oh my goodness me, she's not going to be her friend. So that's the first thing. Also, Demeter has very mixed feelings about feminism. Because biologically, she feels like she should be raising chickens. She feels like she should probably, the most important thing that she can possibly do is raise her children. Why have children if you're not going to be at home with them? So on one hand, she is very emancipated, but also she's but I find it very difficult when people put their kids in with a nanny. She doesn't understand that at all. There is also an extension of the Persephone dynamic in that Demeter has a very strange relationship with her mother. So you may recall that Demeter's mother is Rhea, and Rhea is married to Kronos, and Kronos had historically cut off his father Uranus's rutting phallus. Gaia had got so sick of being pregnant, she had called her son Cronus to deal with the issue. He'd taken a side and he'd cut his father's rutting phallus off. And that had been thrown in the water, and that had become Aphrodite, and the drops of blood had become the Melissae. So Kronos then marries his sister, Rhea. But he has this psychological disturbance that, well, my son killed me. And if I remember rightly, an oracle told him that it would happen to him. So he becomes absolutely paranoid and he keeps swallowing the children. So Rhea has to hide the children. And so she hides Zeus. She wraps him and in the end, I think, if I remember rightly, Kronos swallows a stone. So Demeter doesn't have a father, really. A father swallowed her, and any more than that, she doesn't have a relationship. So, but she also has, a mother who is terrified of what's going to happen to her daughter. So in a way, she's also like Persephone. She's also had this mother who has to protect her from the awful situations. And because of these, she's very embroiled in women are better. I mean, they are, right? I mean, they are. But why would she be interested in men? Why would she be? Look what Zeus did to her. Look what Poseidon did to her. So you also see Demeter archetypes quite strongly in lesbian relationships. Most important aspect of the Demeter archetype is she cannot say no. So go back to the PTA, because this is a good example. Doesn't matter how much she's got on her plate. If somebody needs some cakes baking, they're going to ask her. They're going to ask her because A, she's good at it, and B, because she won't say no. In the office, like I say, she will be giving out the coffee, but also she is very, very susceptible to a sob story. So if somebody tells her that she's being bullied, or they're scared that they're not going to make a deadline, or they've got too much work to do, she'll take it on. And so poor old Demeter is knackered. She has no time for herself. She kind of likes doing these things, more than kind of likes. She's pathologically leaning towards she's got to do these things, because feeling like she's helping someone makes her feel better, but also makes her feel she's superior to everybody else, because she knows she's supposed to be helping everybody. So this is very difficult for many women. This inability to say no, this inability to see outside of what's going on with their child or their job or whatever it is that is their nourishing. That's okay as long as it's okay. But as soon as it goes wrong because children leave home, or because they have a falling out with daughters, oh my goodness me, that can be very, very difficult. And that's leaves a massive hole, not just an emotional hole, but a hole that needs filling with things to do. When kids leave school, no more cakes, no more costumes. This is me, no more costumes. I was just made everybody's costumes for everything, and I loved it. I still love it. The idea of dressing up just fills me with absolute joy. But part of the reason that I've dressed up on videos is because who else am I going to make a costume for? I would be bereft without it. So it's this idea of realising, am I doing it because I like it, or because I'm doing it for somebody else? And if I'm doing it for somebody else, then time to start saying, no, do it yourself. And we'll talk about that as we go, because other archetypes are better at doing it. So when we think about this from a medical astrology point of view, the Demeter archetype equates to the constellation of Cancer. She is the Great Mother. And this is Earth medicine, which is interesting because Cancer is a water sign, right? But Demeter is Ceres. She is the goddess of the harvest. Ceres is her Roman name, goddess of the cereal harvest. So it's all about agriculture and earth. And so, in the next part, we're going to really observe how it feels to allow this Demeter archetype to come to the surface. And thinking about this aspect of having too much to do, doing stuff for people all over the place, and really not being able to dream anymore, because the practicality is you can't do what you want to do because you are so wrapped up in everything you're doing for everybody else. So, lemongrass. The First of all, remember that grass cereal. You'll notice as we go, we're having that. We'll do black pepper as a seed, coriander seed. So all of these like seeds, planting seeds in our mind. But lemongrass's skill is to go, I know all of these reasons you're telling me can't do it. I know it's this, and then this, and then this, and this, and then this. But what if? And it's such a great tool to use for creativity generally, but also for being able to see past the boundaries of your archetype. So I will leave you with your meditation, which is sitting in Demeter's sadness with lemongrass.